Thank you for joining us.
Okay.
Appreciate
All right.
it.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us for this very wonderful opportunity to be able to speak directly with Mr. Yaron Shavit. Mr. Shavit serves as the Deputy Chairman of the Executive for the Jewish Agency for Israel, and we are very, very grateful that he is taking his time to join us for this very intimate call this morning. For those of you on the call, just as by way of information, Jaffe we have very, very close ties to Jaffe on the ground here in Nashville. We have several specific programs that we work directly with Jaffe to provide to our community. First and foremost, it's through Jaffe that we have our community shaliach or shlicha. Some of you would know Noam Harari, who was our immediate past shlicha, as well as our current shaliach Omer Shabbat. He is, unfortunately, he had intended to be with us today. Unfortunately, Omer took sick over the weekend and won't be able to join us this morning. But he is doing much better. He is on the mend, and we know that very soon he will have regained his full strength and be back with us in person. Right now, he is home resting. So that is one piece of Jaffe, is the Shlichut program that provides us with a young Israeli emissary to provide to bring Israel to life in the community of Nashville. That's how I see that program, as it's a living bridge to Israel. It's a young, dynamic person who lives in our community, who serves the entire Jewish community of Nashville. Another connection through Jaffe is Partnership 2000, P2G. Through that program, we have a group of young adult leaders who are participating in what we call Leadership Together. So they are getting leadership training with other American Jews from our consortium community of 10 different US communities. They will be traveling to Israel late April, around Yom HaAtzmaut. The Leadership Together group will be in Israel for special programming there. The other place of specific connection is our Get Connected trip to Israel for our high school students. So we have a group of high school students who will travel to Israel this June. And while they are in our region community of Hadera Aron, they will have home hospitality with families in that area. And all of that is coordinated with our P2G consortium. And all of that is a piece of Jaffe, the Jewish Agency for Israel. With that, I will introduce my colleague, Michal Becker, who will tell us a little bit more about the funding, our local funding in connection to Jaffe, and then she will start the official program. Thank you all for joining us.
Hi, everyone. I'm just continuing what Deborah just started about our relationship with Jaffe, and one of this is obviously the funding. I think that not enough people in our community know why our funding for Jaffe is so important, and they don't know actually what we're funding, and we're gonna work on that more. But so you all know, like, we usually focus on programs, as we always say, it's not programs that are related to any political situation in Israel, are really programs that help people on the ground. And one of them are like to support our connection and our partnership with the Hadera Yaron area. And it's the things like the pre-army mechina, which is a pre-army programs for kids before they go to the army service. We have the Hadera Young Adult Center. We have, and obviously Nitzan or Yaron can add to that. We find a program that's called Tremble Wings. We find the Hand in Hand schools, which is an Arab and Israeli school in Israel. So these are just a few examples of things that we find, again, that are usually unrelated to the political situation in Israel. But we do want to hear from Yaron. So we're honored, Yaron, to have you here. I think the issue of Israel has caused a lot of confusion among the Jewish community here in Nashville, and I think it's important kind of to hear from you what's going on the ground, what Jaffe is doing related to different changes that might happen soon in the state of Israel. And I'll pass you the microphone.
Toda rabba, Michal. Thank you so much for your very kind introduction. So I'm honored to be with you. I'd like to first send greetings for Refuah Shlema to Omer, and recognize Leslie Kubi, the president of the Jewish Agency and the Jewish Federation in Nashville. and the PTG chair, Christy Worms, that I understand as the chair of the Partnership Together program that you spoke about in the opening words. And thank you, Fred, for joining you. I've been working closely with Fred for many years now at the Board of Governors. I think Fred mainly in the assets and liabilities and companies, right? I think that's where we usually are assisting, working together. I would start simply by sharing with you a bit about my story and where I come from, so you understand the background before we go into more details. The name of the introduction that I was going to give is about the Jewish Agency, the Jewish people, and the commitment to advance pluralism in Israel. I would first start, Michal, by telling you that one of the things that I had to learn coming on board the Jewish Agency professionals is that we're no longer called Jaffe. We're actually the Jewish Agency for Israel. And it's if you could turn it into the presentation mode rather than the editing one, it'll be easier. You'd see that I'll also share with you that the background that I have behind me gives the emblem of the Jewish Agency at the 75th year of Israel. So you see it on the right-hand side of my face, the Jewish Agency emblem for the 75th year, and the slogan connecting through our hearts is the slogan that was chosen. I'd start by sharing with you quickly my family. I was born in Israel. I'm an Israeli born. I have my English through the fact that at a young age, my father was sent to a 2-year emissary shlichut for the Ministry of Transportation of the Meteorological Office in Israel to build in Africa a meteorological organization in a small country called Malawi. And that's where I learned my English from. תעביר לנו בבקשה שקף, ניצני, ואנחנו עדיין בתצוגה של... We're still in the presentation editing mode. Anyway, a bit about my family. I'm married to Michal. Michal is an educator. She's a teacher. She teaches history. Here you see Michal in the background in the top. The background is in Gedi, actually where Nitzan was born and grew up. You see on that picture Yara, our youngest daughter, and her husband, newly wedded husband, Zion. They've been married for a year now. They met at the IDC when they both studied law. They're both lawyers these days. And Zion is also the youngest in his family. He's the youngest out of 8 children, the only one who's born in Israel. The rest of his brothers and sisters were born in Ethiopia, and they made Aliyah to Israel. And as I said, they met during their studies together. On the left-hand side of the picture in the army uniform, you see the youngest or the newest addition to our family. This is Ariel. We actually adopted her as a lone soldier when she came to Israel through the reform movement to a pre-army program, and then decided to do army service in Israel. And we were her home. In the middle, and the picture in the middle, the wider one, you'd see also Shurik and Ina. Shurik, we adopted Zalemala, where the sign says Gamani Atzati Mizeh. Shurik is holding the sign, and Ina is next to him. We actually adopted, quote unquote, Shurik when he made Aliyah to Israel at the age of 16 in the program called Na'aleh. It's when children make Aliyah without their parents. They're actually not Olim yet. they come to study in high school. And then if they decide 2 years later that they want to receive Israeli citizenship, they may. And then if they want to stay and do army service, they stay. And that is what Shurik did. He's now has his PhDs from the Technion in statistics, and Ina, his wife, and they have 2 kids. We are very proud grandparents to their kids. We're also proud grandparents to Alma and Yaeli, who are in the picture in the middle, lighting the Chanukiah. And also, where Nitzan pointed out, Yochai is married to Sarah, which he met Sarah when she came here during a Masa program, and he was a student at the Hebrew University, and a program that they were together. They're both now in Palo Alto. Yochai finished his PhDs in Stanford. And that's the picture we took in the middle of COVID, where we visited them and we still had masks on. In the lower picture, you see Michal's mother, who's Yemenite. My parents came from Poland and Czechoslovakia. So you see, we actually are a very pluralistic family ourselves. בוא נראה את השקף הבא וגם את הבא אחריו. We'll quickly go over to leave the family. I came to know, or to volunteer to the Jewish Agency through simply getting to know the Reform movement in Israel as an Israeli who grew up more distant from my Judaism as a religion. We were what we called Chiloni, it's non-practicing Jew. And when Yochai, our eldest, had his bar mitzvah, we actually came across a Reform congregation that was starting to build up in Mevaseret, where we just moved in, where we still live today. And we decided that this is the opportunity to have a fully egalitarian service with my wife and the entire family joining together and all taking part in. And that's how we became part of the Reform movement, the Reform congregation in Mevaseret. Our rabbi at that time, Rabbi Maya Leibovitz, pushed me to take a position as the first in the board of the congregation. You all know that, how we are actually challenged to do more and become more active. And I became the chairman of the congregation at some point. We built the building of the congregation, and then later on asked to take the position of the chairman of the Reform movement in Israel. And then at a later stage, 2006, I was asked to take a lay position for the Reform movement in the national institutions. That's how I became a member of the board of governors of the Jewish Agency. So since 2006, I'm involved as well as a volunteer, as a lay leader in this arena. And for the past year and a half, almost 2 years now, I took the position of the deputy chair of the Jewish Agency. And in front of us is a big map that I also have in my office in front of me to show me the worldwide Jewish population that we serve. You'll see that there is a difference between the core worldwide population, which is 15.2 million, and the law of return, which is 25.3. When you hear issues that rise up these days about the grandchild law of return amendment, that voices came from the current government that they want to maybe amend, that they're considering to amend, it means that we will move from the 25.3 million worldwide Jewish population that we serve only to the core Jewish population, which means that this is the population that only includes people who were born to a Jewish mother and or converted to Judaism. You'd see how the Jewish population is more or less similar. Israel is the biggest one Jewish community in the world, but very close next to it is North America of 6.393 million. The truth is that there are surveys that say that the number is even closer to 12 or 13 million if you include the entire number of Jews who either consider themselves or are part of Jewish families. Let's move to the next slide. When we discussed the declaration of the state, the Declaration of the Independence of the State of Israel, it's obvious that the State of Israel was given to the Israelis not as a land for Israelis, but on the condition that this is the homeland of the Jewish people. So we are not serving only Israelis who vote in Israeli elections. We are actually meant to be, and this is our reason for being, the land of Israel, being the birthplace of the Jewish people. And when the Declaration of Independence was read early at the evening of May 14th, 1948, the members of the Zionist board at that point to become the first interim government of the State of Israel, they read out, accordingly, we members of the People's Councils, representatives of Jewish communities of Eretz Israel and of the Zionist movement, hereby declare the establishment of a Jewish state in Eretz Israel to be known as the State of Israel. Next slide, please. So we want to talk about a few of the programs that the Jewish Agency, which is the table that represents both Israeli society that has representation around the table of the Jewish Agency and worldwide Jewish congregations around the world, North America and the rest of the world. The Jewish Agency for Israel does a few programs that are connected to Jewish peoplehood inside within the Society of the State of Israel. One of them, of the examples, is Kolami, which is the residential education and training programs in Israel of pre-army or gap year students from Israel and from the rest of the world, bringing them together on a 6-month program, building friendships for life. You'll see that in 2020, we had 254 participants. This year, we had over 300, 155 Israelis, 99 from 17 countries abroad. Another example is P2G that you know well from your own federation, Partnerships Together. The Jewish Agency has the initiative that connects Israeli cities with Jewish communities worldwide through the Jewish federations, various Jewish federations, 200 Jewish communities in 45 partnerships that engage over 350,000 Israelis and Jews each year working together and again, building partnerships. I would say, I know that you're part of the Hadera Iran partnership, and we already heard that you're sending a group of young adults to Israel. They come back to the States understanding better what the State of Israel and the Israeli society is all about. Israelis that are involved and come to Nashville come back as shinshinim and emissaries and shlichim. In Pardes Chana, there's a conservative congregation. In Hadera, there is there are first signs of building the now 56, I think, Reform congregation in Israel. And I think that more or less gives the background about Partnerships Together. Shlichut alumni activity after what we've discovered is that Shlichim, Israelis who are sent on Shlichut abroad, the most common slogan that they'll saying that they'll, or insight that they'll be coming back with, is telling us that we went as Israelis, we came back as Jews. Many of them discover that Judaism, their Judaism, and their ability to take ownership of their Jewish life and meaning within their life as well as communities and congregations is after they come back from North America, from the rest of the world as shlichim. So there's the activity of the alumni of the shlichim, and we try to keep them working together. The next slide is about Unity. Again, another program that within the State of Israel cross-sector partnership that train educators and implement high-quality content to their own audiences. In 2019, more than 1,000 senior educators participated in Unity programs. It gives Israelis who were born here, live here, and have never been exposed to understand what world Jewry is all about, a different perspective about the connection between Israeli society and world Jewry. The next slide is about the religious streams and the allocations, vision and mission and vision. What I learned to know is that in 1984, there was 85, sorry, there was an initiative, one of the initiatives to change the law of return about who's the Jew, they call that issue. And this was again one of the rounds that we might be again seeing with this government. And as part of a reaction to that, the Jewish Federations of North America decided to start funding a development of the religious non-Orthodox streams in Israel. The vision of that streamlined funding is to have an Israeli society who is united in its diversity. The mission is to support programs and activities of the streams in Israel. Let's move quickly to the next slide so we see a bit of the outcome of that, a streamlined funding in the budget. You'll see the IMPJ is the Israel Movement for Progressive Judaism. That's the Israeli Reform Movement. We now have 54 congregations. 28 of them were established in the past decade alone. I told you I was the chair of the movement. I was the chair between 2009 and 2013. When I took the position of the chair, we decided that we need to look back on our vision and our targets. And we decided that the most important mission that we should take upon ourselves is to open more and more congregations, which will be opening doors to more and more Israelis to actually enter the life of Reform Judaism that otherwise they may have missed. We do not do any missionary work. We just open congregations to give them an opportunity, just as I had. So when I took the chairmanship, we were 25 congregations. We decided that the mission is that by the next 10 years, we need to double the number of congregations. And as you see, we more than succeeded to do that. To be honest, we actually doubled the number by 2018. And when we were in 2020, we already had 54 congregations, and we have 2 more congregations that are in the backlog. So this is just to show you how many, how flourishing the life of both the Reform and truly the conservative movement as well within the Israeli society. To be honest, I think the success of the Israeli Reform movement is also based on the fact that we are building our own Reform movement. I'll share with you a short story before I actually need to end this, because I promised that I won't take more than 20 minutes in the presentation. I have a good friend who's in California, and he's very much involved in Reform life in Israel. And he was asked by 2 of his friends going to Israel, where he suggests they pray during Shabbat. And he says, he told them to go to a Reform congregation in Jerusalem. They were in Jerusalem, a congregation called Kol Anshama. And when they came back, he asked them, how was how was the trip? It was great. And how was the Shabbat? It was wonderful. And we very much enjoyed the congregation that you suggested, but you recommended. But why did you say it was a Reform congregation? He said, because it's a Reform congregation. He says, yeah, but they pray in Hebrew. So, of course, he laughed and says, that's what Reform Israelis do. They actually pray in Hebrew. They were expecting that a Reform congregation in Israel would be praying in English. The truth is that our strength is that we're being built by the Hebrew Union College in Israel, that we already have more than 100 rabbis, men and women, Israeli rabbis, that were ordained in Israel, speak Hebrew as Israelis, were born and educated and raised in Israel, so they can reach out to the public. And the last survey that was done by the Institute, Jewish People Policy Institute, which is an institute of the Jewish Agency, in 2018, found out that 13% of Jews in Israel identify as progressive Jews, 8% of them Reform, and 5% of them as conservatives. I quickly want to move us, because I know that you are troubled with what's happening these days in Israel. So these are pictures from last night. Many of us joined Rabbi Rick Jacobs, as he's the president of the URJ, the Reform Movement in the Union of Reform Movement in the States, and he was asked to address the more than 130,000 Israelis that gathered in Tel Aviv for a protest against the moves that are taken by the government regarding the judicial system. And he spoke in Hebrew and made a very clear statement of, on the one hand, we, more than 2 million Reform Jews in North America, wholeheartedly support the state of Israel with no questions and no reason, no things raised. You want to give us a few of his words? Let's hear, and it's worthwhile. So I'll just say that his statement was that we're not going to leave Israel or the Israelis alone, and we're going to support you and help you even through difficulties or challenges that we have with the government. We support the state of Israel. No matter what government, this is the democratic process, there is a government in Israel. We have issues with parts of its policies, but that doesn't mean that we won't support Israel or the people in Israel. On the contrary, this is for us a challenge to support Israelis who are of similar views and values as we are, and we're going to support them even stronger, as we did when initially the streamline funding started. I think that gives me more or less the 20 minutes that we agreed, right? So I think we'll open it now for questions or wherever you want to navigate us, Michal.
Thank you so much. That was, even for me, that I grew up also in the Reform. And I know that like everything has happened, but there are lots of information that was even new to me. So I'm going to ask a couple of questions, but then I'm going to open the floor. And since we're a very small group, so everyone can feel welcome just to unmute themselves and ask a question. So just like a general kind of more logistical question, we know how lots of the religious institutions in Israel are funded by the government and they get like government budgets. And so how does it work with the Reform movement?
I'll unmute myself. So with the Reform movement, first we take them to court. We challenge the government in court. That's one of the things that why we are so we're so intimidated by the change of the status of the Supreme Court in Israel, because most of our achievements against the government of Israel regarding being discriminated against vis-a-vis the Orthodox stream in Israel is through the Supreme Court rulings. That's how our first rabbi that challenged the government, and we now have the government of our regional councils, our rabbis that serve in regional councils are now being paid for by the government. It's actually not the salary that allows one to be happy with, so there still need to be support by the congregation, but that's some achievement. Another achievement is through demanding the government to also fund, help us fund the ability to build congregations, to build buildings. So we get caravans from the government and from the few of our congregations. We receive, again, through judicial processes, we need to push cities to allow us to give us a public land so that we can build our synagogues on. And basically, we're based very much on the support of our own congregants. So beside paying my taxes to the state of Israel, and thereby through my taxes funding Orthodox rabbis, I also have to pay my dues to my own congregation so that I can enjoy the rabbi of my choice. But this is part where the Jewish Agency helps. So through the streamlined funding that comes from the Jewish Federation of North America, that you as a federation are a part of, you actually help us fund our rabbis through funding our movement, and then the movement helps support the congregations.
And that's true for the that's a great answer. And that's true for the conservative movement in Israel too.
Exactly.
Right? Okay. And so, and last question, then I'm going to open the floor. So now that you're expected these changes in the Israeli policy, so what's your scenario in your head? Like, how can you describe like the future of the reform movement in Israel, given the changes?
Ooh, okay, there are two different things. I'll say it this way. I'll start with the end. The future for the reform movement, I think, is great in the Israeli society, simply because, to be honest, it's nothing to do with me or any one of us. It's a great product. It's a great product for Israelis to like us, that grew up as non-observant Orthodox Jews, but need to find our own meaning of Judaism to ourselves. I'll give it connected to the pictures that I shared with you about my family. My children's grandmother that you saw in one of the pictures that I said that she's a Yemenite. She actually grew up in a very Orthodox, ultra-Orthodox family in Mea Shearim in Jerusalem. There are 8 kids, 8 brothers, 4 brothers and 4 sisters. All the brothers are they are no longer ultra-Orthodox, but all the brothers are still Orthodox. All the sisters married non-Orthodox Jews, Chiloni, but they had very Masorti families and houses and homes. And she is delighted with the reform movement because 2 of her grandchildren actually know how to recite Birkat HaMazon simply by being at the pre-army mechina of the reform movement in Israel. And there suddenly, through that, they know how to recite, they know how to pray. And she's, again, non-Orthodox, but she knows that they have a connection to Judaism, which makes her proud. And actually the first Sephardi Torah scroll that was donated to the IMPJ was donated by her to the pre-army program that we have in the IMPJ. So I think the movement will thrive simply because it's a great product. The challenges with the government are huge. They actually trouble me more as an Israeli and as a Jew generally than as a Reform Jew, and for that matter, because I think that if we unfortunately stop or become less of a liberal democracy, not only democracy is not good enough. Zionism is based on liberalism. It's part of the Zionist program. You have to be respectful of all different ways of being a Jew. This is an initial basic part of Zionism. A fundamental point in building the state of Israel is it being a place for all Jews around the world, no matter religion, sex, gender, or stream or whatever. If the state of Israel will become more focused on one side of Judaism and become less liberal and become less respectful of the rule of law, through the last word being the last word of the Supreme Court, strengthening the politicians who are actually enjoying even less trust than the judicial system does, I think it'll be very, very bad for us as the state of Israel, and also for us as being a light upon the nations, that we hope that Jews around the world will look up to us and support us simply because we are standing for something that they're very proud of. If less and less Jews will feel proud of what the state of Israel looks like, I'm very much I'm very much there to see the future of Israel if the Jewish people will simply stop supporting it. So that's what troubles me more than anything else.
Thank you, Yaron. Now, if anyone has any question, you're welcome to unmute yourself. And in the meantime, I'm just going to mention that Joshana said that one of the Jaffe educators that lived in Nashville is a professor at
Michal Mushkat Barakan is a great professor. I love her.
Good morning. This is Felicia Anchor. Hello, Mr. Shavit. It's nice to meet you. I am in southern Florida right now on the West Coast. This conversation of a small Jewish community here is quite intense about what has been going on as we follow. And the part that is so disquieting to me is that the notion of democracy is coming back to bite us. And I don't really know how to reconcile the fact that this underlying power of the thing that we cherish so much, the democratic vote, is coming back to hurt us so badly. I know that from my point of view, the relationship that we have with Israel, and thank you for clarifying this idea that is our Jewish homeland for all of us, and therefore we all have a stake in its success and its future. But you've already mentioned, and I'll just kind of reiterate, our relationship really takes two forms. One is our financial support. The second is our emotional and philosophical and historical commitment. We have a challenge now of young people really not being able to click into that emotional longevity in history. And then we have people who are my age who are saying, wait a minute, I'm giving my money, I'm participating, but what am I seeing? What am I getting? Where is it going? And so I guess the question after I've given you my lecture, my sermon, is what kind of leverage do we have? What do you suggest we do in a productive way besides inform ourselves to support what's going on in terms of people like you who are intelligent and thoughtful and on the ground there?
Okay, thank you for that. It's we're all realizing, I think we all realize very well the issues of what we call democracy that's in a defense. where it's being attacked through using democratic processes to get a majority that actually wants to take it away from, at least from liberal democracy as we know it. And unfortunately, we do not have a constitution. By the way, the reason why we don't have a constitution, in spite of the fact that when the first interim parliament was established in Israel, its goal for the first year was, its task was to come and agree on a constitution. It very quickly became evident that this is simply impossible because of forces from the ultra-Orthodox part that were very intimidated from the issue, the understanding that there'll be a constitution that is the basic law and not the rule of the rabbi or whatever that they feel, or the Bible or whatever, that they feel that this is the basic constitution that needs to be as a basic law for the state of Israel. So they dropped it all together, and we're building slowly, piece by piece, what we call fundamental laws to be eventually our constitution. I will say this. First, you should be, at least I am very proud of the fact that in spite of us realizing the challenges within our camp in society, which usually these days is much more every person for themselves, much less willing to leave the comfort of their home and take action. You see that at least half, even more than Israeli society, is standing up and willing to leave their homes every Saturday evening, and whenever they're called, we've been called twice on work days, to leave everything and to go and demonstrate in Jerusalem. And that, for me, it was the first time that I actually saw there is a saying in Hebrew, Neharot Adam, rivers of people. It was the first time that I actually saw a picture that Nitzan shared with you in the last picture of the presentation. You'd see that from above, the picture of hundreds and thousands of people standing up for their rights. When that happens, it's usually very difficult for a government to actually make, you see that picture on the left, all the small dots that you see, and many of them holding the flag of the state of Israel. This is across the Ayalon. The bridge that we're standing on here is the Ayalon bridge, Gesher HaShalom, and you'd see the hundreds and thousands, and they go deeper and deeper to the far left corner of the picture, to Kaplan. So you see that people are standing up. Eventually, they'll need to come to some kind of a compromise. I hope, and I'm quite sure, that this compromise will be led by our former chair of the Jewish agencies, now the president of Israel, Yitzhak Bougie Herzog. At the moment, it seems, and it becomes, again, very challenging from our side of the map, because I just learned last night that a good friend of mine is actually one of the activists in this organizing the demonstrations, told me that she needed to bring together more than 100 civil organizations to work together, each and every one of them taking a part in this civil commotion, if we could call it that. It becomes a big challenge to connect all of them on one agenda, and especially it's obvious that they're not led by politicians. Unfortunate for Yair Lapid or for Benny Gantz, neither of them is actually leading that civil uprising. So it'll be very difficult to bring everyone together to some kind of a compromise, but a compromise will have to be achieved, allowing the Supreme Court to stay on top of all the processes in Israel and making sure that the rule of law still governs. What you can do is simply stick with us. Do not do the thing that we are so good at and say, you know what, it's too complicated for me, I'm walking away. Please don't walk away from us. On the contrary, Remember that we're up there. We need you. We need your support. We need you to get more involved, and we need you to help us strengthen ourselves to make sure that this very awful change in the scope of the state of Israel will not take place. And another small thing that you can do, something that many North American Jews prefer not to do. Every 5 years, there are elections to the Zionist Congress, and we need you to get involved and stand up and vote for the lists that represents your values, because we again get to sit around the table of the Zionist institutions in a democratic process, and you have a vote. It's not only you have a stake in the state of Israel, you also have a vote. That's it.
Thank you, Yaron. Suzanne, do you want to be next?
Yes, I'm going to be going to Israel in less than a month to visit my children. One of my children is, he tells me that he's right wing. He tells me that he is for the changes in the Supreme Court. We've already said that we're not going to talk about politics during Pesach. But my daughter is definitely, she and her husband are on the left, and we have already decided that we're going to at least go to the one of the demonstrations, we want to either go in Tel Aviv or go to Jerusalem. And Tel Aviv apparently is on Monday, and Jerusalem is on Saturday. And I know Michal has been posting about going to those demonstrations. She's been going for weeks, and she's a close family friend. So my question is, how do I speak to my son, who was brought up conservative, but is now, I don't know what he is. He's a Zionist, but I think he's much more religious than my daughter and I are. So how do we speak to him and try and talk to him? He and I can be very civil about it, but I need to get him to understand. He doesn't like working in Tel Aviv because he doesn't like having to go through the crowds of demonstrators, which is, to me, it seems ridiculous that he can't even see it. Do you have any suggestions to talk to our family and friends in Israel about what's going on?
Yeah, the first suggestion is just, you know what to do. You just hug him and kiss him, and that's what you do with your children. Both of them, doesn't matter what their political views are. Regarding their political views, yes, sometimes it's best not to decide that we're not talking about that. That's also some families in Israel do that also. It sometimes really splits families. I have to tell you that there are many and more right-wing voters who actually voted for parties that are part of this coalition, that stand up to say and demonstrate to say that this is not what they meant with their vote. So eventually, and with your son, some kind of a compromise needs to take place. We're not annihilating the Supreme Court. We want the rule of law to have the last word. Funnily enough, I'm just giving that as an example. Okay, of course, I have my own views, and I'm not hiding them from you. But the same government that is thinking of changing the law of return is also, on the one hand, changing the law to allow a minister to allow someone who has been a convicted felon to become a minister, that, by the way, under the law of return, would not be allowed to make aliyah to Israel, because if you're a convicted felon, one of the things that you can do is make aliyah to Israel, even if you're a Jew born to a Jewish mother. So with that being said, it's obvious that part of the changes that this government does are basically meant to be very personal, to serve some personal interests. Some of them are more deeper and have a more stronger intent, saying that the Supreme Court and the system of our judicial system, and I will say that as an attorney, do not represent widely the widespread of Israeli society. We're not diverse enough in our system. It's more privileged. It's more Ashkenazi, not enough Sephardi. To be honest, there are not enough judges in the first place. So many Israelis who come to the judicial system leave it with a feeling that they have not been done justice or not been served right, simply by a very long and annoying process. And they do say in American, justice delayed is justice denied, and many of the system in Israel, of the processes are very long. Israelis, Jews love to debate and love to disagree and need someone to decide upon their disagreement, and this brings a lot of load. So there are things for sure that need to be changed, and they will be changed. I hope that most of them will be changed through a large understanding and agreement, a wide one that says these are changes that need to take place, and less of the changes will take place simply because there are personal interests. These might also happen, but we need to remind ourselves, in spite of the fact that truly many of my friends say we are going to fight this to the streets and to everything, and remind us of, but to be honest, basically changes can also take place or should take place in the next elections, and most of these things could be reversed and overturned if we will be able to get our widely democratically support to the values that we believe in. So I hope that gives you some kind of an answer.
Thank you, Yaron. We're going to do the last question, and then we're going to start closing. I don't want to take much of your time. So Mary is asking, how would changes in the law of return affect the numbers of Americans who make Aliyah, and would it affect the number of American young adults who are able to serve in the army, in the IDF?
Okay, so again, I'm very hopeful that there won't be any changes in the law of return, to be honest. And to be honest, and I think we should give credit here to the leadership of the 5 institutions of the Zionist movement, led by the chairman of the Jewish Agency, and also with the chairman of Karen Isod, the chairman of the WZO. All of the leadership wrote a letter to the Prime Minister with congratulating him on forming a government, also raising 2 things that already were said in this letter, that we are keeping our eyes open to make sure you do not change, you do not touch the status quo regarding the law of return and regarding conversion. These 2 things could make a major change, and I think that if, God forbid, the government does return to an initiative to change these or to touch them, I think then the Jewish Agency and the Jewish Federations of North America and World Jewry should really stand up, and leadership fly to Israel and join us in making a very clear statement that this is something that should not be touched, and I hope that it won't be touched. If it will, there may be 2 kind of implications. One of them, and I think that, to be honest, the surveys show that are probably be less relevant to North American Jewry. One of the implementations will be that grandchildren of Jews who did not convert to Judaism could not make Aliyah to Israel under the law of return. They could join the Jewish people through conversion and everything, but they could not join through the law of return. I'm saying that statistics show that this grandparent side part of the law of return is generally more relevant to Jews who live in non-democratic societies that actually feel that they have a need to leave their country rather than to choose to come to Israel. These are places of distress, like in Russia these days. There is more implementation about the grandson part of the law of return, that it will implement Jews from Russia that will want to flee Russia and see Israel as an exit plan, rather than Jews living in North America and choosing Israel, because usually that is less relevant to the grandchild part of the law of return. The other part will be that may be affected is conversions. Again, I hope this won't be touched, but through the Supreme Court judgment, conversions of non-Orthodox, mainly Reform, by the way, Reform conservative, but also ultra-Orthodox conversions that are done outside of Israel, but are accepted, recognized by a local congregation and by the movements in Israel, are accepted by the Israeli government as conversions to Judaism, as a full Jew, and the right to make aliyah to Israel for that convert. This might change. There is also a chance that conversions that are done in Israel by the Reform movement and the conservative movement that basically are to children of families and mothers mainly who came to Israel under the law of return but were not halachically Jews. They convert to Judaism in Israel. I don't know, Fred, if you were in Beit Daniel when I invited the last Board of Governors on a Friday. Just by chance, by mere chance, there were 30 converts there. So every month there are converts to Judaism in Israel. This might also change, and unfortunately, in Israel, I'm quite sure that they will not choose Orthodox conversions, because this is a process that is simply, to someone who doesn't want to be Orthodox, are unacceptable. They will go into your life. They will demand you to really change the way you live and what you do and how you dress and how your Shabbat looks like. And that is really not appealing. And there are more than almost 500,000 Israelis who are born to families like that, or made aliyah as part of non-halachically Jews, who will choose not to do any conversion at all. I hope that gives an answer to the question. It's not good news if that'll happen. That's the bottom line.
We know that. Thank you, Yaron. Unless you have any final comment, I want to pass it on to Fred to close our very interesting talk.
Yeah, Yaron, thank you so much for being here. Nitzan, thanks for backing him up. Hopefully you've gotten a little bit of a picture into exactly how deeply intertwined we are here in Nashville with the state of Israel, more importantly with the people of Israel. And hopefully you understand a little better how phenomenally complex this issue is. These issues go back to the founding of the state and before. But we all have a stake in it. And all I can say is, this is one of the better ways to stay involved and stay informed. Keep up with the emails from the Federation. Get on mailing lists, read, but most importantly, talk to people you know in Israel. As I often say, it's one thing to care about Israel; it's something else altogether to care about Israelis. That's the basis of what we do and what we try to accomplish. And I've been talking to people for the past few weeks on both sides of the ledger in Israel, and every time I come away, I say, well, yeah, you're right. Yeah, you're right. you can't both be right, but they are. So it's complex, but we've always dealt with complexity, and it's what makes us who we are. So thanks to all of you for being on and for being concerned and for being committed, and bring some more people along. Tell people not to be afraid. Dive in head first. And thanks again. And thank you, Michal. And thank you, Deborah.
Thank you, Fred. And yes, let's just keep learning more about what's going on there and work. I feel like, again, I think many people in our community don't understand how important Jaffe is to our mission and the things we believe in. And I think we're taking it on ourselves also to take part in this education.
Thank you so much, and happy Purim, everyone.
Yes.
Happy
Purim Sameach.
Sameach.
Thank you all.
See you soon.
Bye.
Thank
See
you
you
all.
soon.
Sameach.
Bye. See you.
Bye.